the history of the world, right? I mean, we've really solved, and this has been wonderful in many, many ways. We've solved how to create new chemicals and have used that power to really improve the world. But chemicals are dangerous things, and the more complex the chemical, the more dangerous it is at smaller and smaller concentrations. So a lot of these laws, a lot of these protections that were created in the 1970s that dealt with arsenic or barium or things that we knew were dangerous and have existed for thousands of years or since the world began, those laws were designed for those chemicals, and they weren't designed for these new things that are emerging. So as a result, the EPA system, which is called TSCA, for analyzing new chemicals and analyzing the threats they represent, is completely broken. The GAO has said that it's broken. Congress has said it's broken. Lisa Jackson has said that it's broken. They're trying to redesign that system. But there are thousands and thousands of chemicals that essentially the government has never analyzed, which are part of our daily life and a part of our daily environment.
And the power of the lobbyists, I go back to, because we see it with the health insurance industry now. We see it operating overtime and overdrive in Washington, D.C. In 2000, they had a tremendous effect when the Bush administration was going to issue stricter controls. Their lobbying efforts gutted that, scuttled that. What makes you think the same won't happen now?
Well, I think what's happening now is there's been a lot of meetings, and you know, no industry wants more regulation. It just creates more cost, right? I mean, I think anyone who works in any industry thinks, oh, we do a pretty good job. We don't need the government coming in. So it's understandable that every industry would fight back against regulation. What's happened in the last year, and part of this is just President Obama has been elected. They see the writing on the wall, and they know they have to change. But also a realization on the part of industry itself that there has to be a cop at the table, is that the chemical manufacturers and the industry has actually sat down with a number of the environmental groups to say, we need a more rational system here. So I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that we're going to see reform, in part because the EPA has said reform's coming whether you want it or not, but in part because the chemical industry has said, we either have to get on the bus or we're going to be left behind. And there seem to be a lot of good faith efforts on their part to come up with a system. Now, obviously they want to influence, right? You want to have a seat at the table because otherwise you don't get to say what the outcome looks like. But the environmentalists that I respect, that I speak to, say that they have these conversations and they think that there is a real dialogue happening.
Well, we want to thank you for being with us. And as you head back to the Times, how is the mood there? Over 100 people about to
Yeah, it's you know, it's.
How many do you have in the newsroom?
I think we have almost over 1,200, I believe.
And 100 are going to be axed by December.
100 are going to be either voluntarily take a buyout. You know, it's this project that we've done, and we've spoken about this before, we spent 10 months building a database, and there were probably 7 or 8 people involved in it. And
more extensive than the EPA.
More extensive than the EPA. And one of the things that readers said that was really encouraging is they said, thank goodness the Times is doing this type of work. It's expensive. We're living in this new world, and we're trying to figure out how the newspaper can be economically viable in this new world. For anyone who's watching who thinks that what the Times does is important, it's important to, we don't do a very good job of saying buy a subscription, but if you buy a subscription, you're supporting the Times or the Journal or Democracy Now! Or anything. You have to economically support the media institutions that you believe in. And what we're seeing right now is that if people forget to support those institutions, we have to fire journalists.
And the reality is that there are virtually no media companies left in America that could spare 7 people to work for months and months on one project to be able to come up with this.
Yeah, I mean, there's it used to be, every major city used to have a newspaper that did genuine investigative reporting. Now there's, 2 or 3 newspapers in this nation that really do it. And you don't know the stories you don't see, right? Nobody wakes up and says, oh gosh, there was an important story on water, but nobody wrote it. It's very important that people support. We're so used to, at this point, getting our media for free over the internet and saying that it's such a wonderful world that we don't have to pay for the news. But when you don't pay for the news, people suffer, or the journalists suffer. And I know that public radio is dealing with this, you guys are dealing with this, we're dealing with this. If readers and viewers believe in media, buy a subscription, send in donations.
And thanks also for helping to explain why people regularly now, every week, are being arrested throughout places like states like West Virginia, being arrested protesting, for example, mountaintop removal, coal power plants, etc.
Yeah, and there's no one to cover it.
Charles Duhigg, we want to thank you for being with us, award-winning reporter for the New York Times, the author of the new series about the worsening pollution in American waters. It's called Toxic Waters. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we're going to look at the CIA, following your tweets, your blogs, what you're buying on Amazon.com. Stay with us.
You don't miss your water. I kept you crying, sad and blue. Oh my God, I was a playboy. I just wouldn't be true. But now that you left me, good Lord, how I cry. I keep crying, I keep crying. Ooh, I didn't miss my water. No, I never miss my water till my well run dry. I sit here and wonder how in the world this could be. Oh man, I never thought you'd ever leave me. But now that you left.
Yes, Otis Redding singing "You Don't Miss Your Water Till